students, welcome to Sunil's tutorial. I'm Sunil Milwani and today we'll be doing this chapter called as genetic basis of inheritance. Right? Now let's continue where we had left. First, let's see certain characteristics of the pea plant. Characteristics of pea plant. Right? Now, characteristics of pea plant. First, now the pea plant is an annual plant. It grows throughout the year and it completes its life cycle, that is flowering, fruiting, etc. in 3 to 4 months. Therefore, results can easily be studied and you could have 3 generations in a year. Right? So, I can say that garden pea is an annual and completes its life cycle in, that is flowering, fruiting, etc. within 3 to 4 months. Right? Next. So you could easily have say about 3 generations in a year of a garden pea plant. Now it is a small herbaceous plant and it is very easy to cultivate. It produces many seeds. So you could grow thousands of them on a small plot. It is a small plant. It is a small herbaceous plant and easy to cultivate. It produces many seeds. Right, so that thousands of them can be grown in a small plant. Thousands of them can be grown in a small plot. Right? Third, let's come to the flower. Now, the flowers of a garden pea plant are naturally self-pollinating. Hence, they are available in pure form to start any hybridization experiment. Right? So, flowers are naturally self-pollinating. And hence are available in pure form. Right? Next, there are a number of contrasting characters in the homozygous form, and most important point is that one character is completely dominant over the other. That means you have a lot of contrasting characters. In a homozygous plant. Now, if you know that chromosomes are diploid in number, right? Now, if the 2 chromosomes that determine our characteristics are not identical, then that is homozygous. Fine, do we get this thing clear? So, you have a lot of contrasting characters in homozygous plants, and the most important point is that the characters are such that one is completely dominant over the other. In the case of homozygous, suppose if I have a tall and a dwarf, if I have the chromosome of a tall plant combining or doing a cross with a dwarf plant, I would either get a tall, the physical characteristics that I would see is either tall or dwarf. I will not see anything in between. Right? So I can say that there are a number of contrasting characters in homozygous, and the most important point is that one character is completely dominant over the other. Right? Next, I told you that flowers are naturally self-pollinating. Now the best part about them are that they are large enough for a process called emasculation. The flowers are large enough for a process called as emasculation. Now what is emasculation? It is the removal of the stamen well before the anthesis, that is before the formation of the pollen grain. So if I remove the stamen before the formation of pollen grain, then that process is called as emasculation. So the flowers are large enough, so it is very easy to perform the process of emasculation. Fine. I can say that though flowers are naturally self-pollinating, they are large enough for easy emasculation. Right? During hybridization. They are large enough for easy emasculation during hybridization and produce fertile offsprings. Right? Now, another important point is that it has contrasting characters. Now the contrasting characters are available, it has 7 contrasting characters, and the 7 contrasting characters are available on 7 different chromosomes. That is another unique feature of this plant, right? The 7 contrasting characters are present on 7 different chromosomes. Right? So these are the characteristics of a pea plant. Now, the question, why did Mendel select pea plant for his theory of genesis or his theory of genetic theory? Why did he select pea plant? Right? Mendel select pea plant. Why did Mendel select pea plant? Now, for his experiment. Now that we know the characteristics of a pea plant, we should easily be able to determine why he selected. Now, The garden pea plants are available in pure form with many true breeding characters. Now garden pea is also called as Pisum sativum. Right, that's your garden pea. Garden pea plants are available in a pure form, with many true breeding characters. Right? Next, Mendel observed that there is occurrence of contrasting traits in pea plant growing in his monastery, that we already discussed as a characteristic, that there are different characteristics that they have, right? So Mendel observed the occurrence of contrasting characters or traits in pea plant, right? Then the third reason why he selected pea plant, because pea plants are easy to cultivate. Pea plants are easy to cultivate. Right? Next, the life cycle of pea plants is few months. Again, one of the characteristics, 3 or 4 months you can finish its life cycle. So life cycle of pea plants is of few months. Right? Next, large number of seeds are borne by the plant. Large number of seeds are borne by the plant. So you could have as many seeds as you want, and you could grow as many plants as you want, right? The plant is small and the flowers are large. The plant is small and the flowers are large. Right? Next, the plant does not require much aftercare. Plant does not require much aftercare. Right? Once you grow the plant, there's not a lot of things that you have to take care of if you have to grow this plant. Right? The flowers are bisexual and normally self-pollinated. Flowers are bisexual and normally self-pollinated. Right? Next, then you can say that there is little chance of contamination from foreign pollen. In the case of this plant, there is little chance of contamination from foreign pollen. There is little chance of contamination from foreign pollens. So the chances of contamination are very less in this. flowers can be cross-pollinated only manually. Flowers can be cross-pollinated only manually. Right? That is one of the reasons. And the last is the new cross that you would get is going to be fertile, right? So the hybrids are fertile. Now before I actually go into Mendel's experiment as to what he did with the pea plant, these were the reasons why he selected the pea plant. Now, what was his experiment? What were his conclusion? Before I actually go into this, I will first teach you certain terminology that I would require for genetics, right? Let's see genetic terminology. Now, let's see what does each word mean, so that we can understand this experiment better. What do I understand by the word character? Character means it is nothing but it is a feature of the organism. For example, the height of the stem, the color of the flower, the color of the pod of the pea plant. So that is called as a character. It is a feature of the organism. That is the meaning of the word character. Once I give you the meanings of the word, then it will be easier for you to understand Mendel's experiment. Trait. What do I understand by the word trait? Right? Character means a feature of the organism. A feature of the organism that can be inherited from one generation to another generation is called as trait. If the parent has certain character, if the same character comes in the generation, the first generation, then that is called as trait. An inheritable character and its detectable variant, right? Suppose if I am tall and if my son also becomes tall, or if I am tall and my son comes out to be short, it's an inheritable character, either he'll be short or tall, which if either he can be tall or the variant will be he'll be short. So an inheritable character and its detectable variant is called as its trait. Is called as trait. So an inherited character and its detectable variant is called as the trait, right? Then, what do I understand by the word factor? Remember we said that Mendel was the first to use the word factor. A unit of heredity or a particle which is present in the organism which is responsible for inheritance or expression of character is called as a factor. You are going to get characteristics that are similar to your parents. That is going to be transmitted by something. That something that is responsible for transmission of heredity and expression of character from one generation to another generation is called as a factor. That's what he called as a factor. So factor, it is a unit of heredity. It is a unit of heredity. It is a unit of heredity, a particle present in the organism, a particle present in the organism which is responsible for inheritance, and expression of a character. Right? That is what is factor. Factor is something that is passed from one generation to the next through the gametes. Okay. Next, what do we understand by gene? What do we understand by gene? It is a particular segment of DNA which is responsible for inheritance and expression of character. This term gene was coined by the biologist Johansen. Okay. So what is gene? Gene is nothing but, what is gene? It is a particular segment. It is a particular segment. It is a particular segment of DNA which is responsible for the inheritance and expression of that character. Right? Now if you want, I will give you this also. The term gene was coined. This term was coined by the biologist Johansen. Right? That is what is gene. Next, another very important term that is used in genetic is alleles, or some authors even write this as allomorphs. Alleles or allomorphs, right? The two alternative forms of gene are called as alleles of each other. That means if there is some genetic character that would make me tall, then its alternative would be a genetic character that would make me short. So these are called as alleles of each other. So the two alternative forms of a gene. If there is a gene that would give me fair complexion, there would be a gene that would give me dark complexion. Then that would be called as alleles of each other, right? They occupy identical location in a homologous chromosome, right? The two, it could be two or more. The two alternative forms of gene, the two alternative forms of gene are called alleles. Right? Alleles of each other. They are called as alleles of each other. They occupy loci on the homologous chromosomes. Loci means they occupy the position of homologous chromosome, right? These terms, who discovered the word alleles or who made the word alleles, these terms were coined by the biologist Bateson. He was the one who came up with this word. Next, another very important term in genetics is dominant. Now, what is an allele? It is an alternative form of gene. So for every gene there will be an alternative form. If there is a gene that would give me smooth hair, there would be a gene that would give me curly hair. Right? Out of those two alternative forms, one of that form will express itself and one will not express itself. The form that expresses itself is called as the dominant character. Right? I would have both the genes in me. I would have a gene that would make my hair long and straight. There would be a gene in me that would make my hair curly and short. Both the genes are present in me, but physically, externally, only one gene will express itself. Either I will have long and straight hair, or I will have short and curly hair. So that gene which expresses itself externally is called as the dominant character. Fine, do you understand this? So out of the two ales, there will be always alternative form. Out of the two alternative form, the alternative form that expresses itself, the form that expresses itself is called as the dominant form. Fine? It is dominant, it is an ale that expresses, it is an ale that expresses its trait, in the presence of an alternative ale, in the presence of an alternative ale in heterozygous condition. Heterozygous condition. Right? Now, there is going to be an ale that would express itself, so that means there is going to be another ale that will not express itself, and that character is called as recessive character. Right? What is the recessive character? It is an ale which does not express itself in a heterozygous condition. I have chromosome that is going to either make me tall or it will make me short. I have both the chromosomes present in me. Out of that, one chromosome will express itself. So physically I will become tall. The other chromosome which has not expressed itself in my body is going to be the recessive trait. Okay. So it is an ale which is not expressed in the presence, which is not expressed in the presence of an alternative table. In the presence of an alternative table, which is not expressed in the presence of an alternative table. The alternative table means heterozygous condition. It expresses only in the presence of another identical ale. It expresses only in the presence of another identical ale. Fine. Next, what do I understand by phenotype? The external appearance of an individual for a particular character or for a particular trait is called as its phenotype. I have both the chromosomes, one that would make me tall, one that would make me short, right? But the chromosome that would make me tall expresses itself such that it is physically present on me. I have actually grown tall. Physically, when you look at me, I would appear as tall. Then that would be called as the phenotype, right? So the character that shows itself externally is the phenotype. Phenotype. What do I understand by phenotype? The external appearance of an individual for any trait is called phenotype. Is called phenotype for that trait. I have a chromosome and it is expressing itself physically, it is expressing itself externally on the body of the individual, then that is called as the phenotype, right? It is observable. It is observable and is determined by different combinations of age. And is determined by different combination of ales, right? And that's called as the phenotype. Next, genotype. What do I understand by genotype? Genotype, it is a representation of the genetic constitution of an individual. If I show the genetic constitution of an individual for a particular trait, then that would be called as genotype. If you show the genetic constitution for tallness, then that would be called as its genotype, right? It is, see, once I finish the expressions, I'll make a table and show to you. It is representation. It is representation of the genetic constitution of the genetic constitution. It is a representation of genetic constitution of an individual. With respect to a single character, with respect to a single character, with respect to a single character or a set of characters. Next, what do I mean by homozygous? Homozygous. Now, if the individual possesses similar alleles, I have two chromosomes that would express a character. Both the chromosomes are same. Both represent tallness or both represent shortness, then that would be called as homozygous. So, an individual that possesses similar alleles for a particular trait is called as homozygous, or it is also called as pure. Fine, do we get this in here? If both the chromosomes for a particular character that an individual has are identical, they are not contrasting but they are identical, then that is called as homozygous, right? An individual possessing similar alleles, an individual possessing similar alleles for a particular trait is called homozygous. Is called as homozygous or pure for that trait. And do we get this in here? Now, homozygous breed true to the trait and produce only one type of gamete. If you have homozygous, then you would have only one type of gamete. When gamete is made out of the diploid chromosome, they get converted into haploid form. Now, if they are homozygous, say I have the two chromosomes that both are expressing tallness. So when I convert them into gamete, I will get the same identical character. But if they were not same, tall and short, then I could either get a tall gamete or I could get a short gamete. But in the case of homozygous, what will happen is that they will breed true and they will express that same character. Fine, do we get this in here? So I can say that homozygous breeds breed true to the trait. Homozygous breed true to the trait and produce only one type of gamete. And produce only one type of gamete. Right? That is homozygous. Next, heterozygous. When the individual possesses dissimilar alleles for a particular trait, then that is called as heterozygous. Fine, do we get this thing here? So what is heterozygous? Heterozygous is an individual possessing dissimilar alleles for a particular trait is called as heterozygous or hybrid for that trait. Is called heterozygous or hybrid for that trait. Fine. Now, heterozygous does not breed true because it produces two different types of gametes. Heterozygous does not breed true. For that trait. It does not breed true for that trait and produces two types of gametes. That's heterozygous. Right? Next. What do I understand by pure line? What is a pure line? An individual or a group of individuals that is homozygous is true breeding for one or more trait. If you are homozygous for one or more trait, then you are said to be a pure line. So what is a pure line? Where for any particular characteristics, both your chromosomes are identical. You are true breeding for that particular character or that particular trait. Right? So an individual or a group of individuals an individual or a group of individuals that is homozygous or true breeding for one or more trait. Is said to be a pure line. Then what is a hybrid? Right? Suppose if you are a heterozygous individual, that means for a particular character you don't have the same chromosomes, you have contrasting chromosomes, then you are said to be a hybrid. Right? It is heterozygous individuals produced from any cross involving pure parents having one or more contrasting traits. It is heterozygous individual produced. Heterozygous individuals are produced from any cross cross means breeding, involving pure parents or involving pure parents having one or more contrasting traits. Having one or more contrasting trait. Next, what do you understand by the word monohybrid? Now, it is a heterozygous for one trait and is produced in a cross of two pure parents, this differing in one single pair of contrasting character. If you have pure parents as in both the traits or both the ales are going to be identical for all the characters, but only for one character their ales are going to be contrasting, right? So in that case, if you do a cross between such pure parents, what you get is a monohybrid, where all the characters will be similar, there's only chances of one character that would differ, where you could get contrasting traits. Fine, do we get this in here? It is monohybrid. Monohybrid, it is heterozygous for one trait and produce, that means all the other characters will have homologous or will have homozygous. It's only one particular character that will be heterozygous, right? So it is heterozygous for one trait and produced in a cross between two pure parents differing in a single pair of contrasting characters. Right? That is monohybrid. Now, if you are monohybrid, similarly you could have dihybrid. In dihybrid, you would have two characters that would differ, right? Next, what do I understand by F1 generation? F1 generation. F stands for philal, meaning offspring produced in sexual reproduction, right? It is a Latin word which means son. Okay, so the offspring produced from a cross is called as the first philal or the F1 generation, right? So when you have a cross, what you get, if you have cross between two parents, what you get is called as the F1 generation, right? I can say that F stands for philal, meaning offspring produced in sexual reproduction. Offspring produced in sexual reproduction. Latin word for filling. Means son. That's F1. Okay. So the offsprings produced from a cross. The offsprings produced from a cross is called first filial or F1 generation. Now, the F1 generation will show uniform expressions. It shows uniform expression. Right? Then you can have F2 generation. You could have F2 generation. F2 generation means the second generation. Right? The second generation produced by selfing of F1 generation offspring is called as second filial or the F2 generation. I have a cross between parents that gives me F1 generation. Now, if I do selfing with F1 generation, F1 generation combines itself with itself, then that is called as F2 generation. Right? Do we get this thing clear? The second generation produced by selfing of F1 generation offsprings. That means if I combine two F1 generation offsprings, what I get is called second filial or F2 generation. Right? Now it shows two or more types of individuals in a particular ratio. It shows two or more types of individuals in a particular ratio. So you have F1 generation, you have F2 generation. Next, what do you mean by a Punnett square? Or it is also called as a checkerboard. Right? What is a Punnett square or a checkerboard? Right? It is a diagram that shows possibilities of combination in a particular cross experiment. If I do cross experiment, what are the possible alternatives for the various traits that I can get? That is called as a Punnett square. It is a diagram. It is a diagram that is used to show possibilities of combination in a particular cross experiment. Right? It is named after, this diagram is named after Reginald C. Punnett, who devised this approach. Fine. Now, it is used by breeders to know the possible genotypes and phenotypes of an offspring in a cross. What would be the genetic code and what would be the physical appearance if I have a cross? Why do we use it? It is used by breeders to know all the possible genotypes and phenotypes of offsprings in a cross. Right? So do we understand this? Okay, we'll stop this here for the day. Thank you very much.